So now let me introduce the moderator and the speakers. You can come on stage when I call you and take your seats in order. So the moderator is Cecilia Cabello, Policy Officer at the Directorate General of Research and Innovation of the European Commission. She has an MSc degree in Science, Society, and Technology Studies, and she is the chair of the Working Party of National Experts on Science and Technology Indicators of the Organization for Economic Cooperation and Development, OECD. Then we have, as speakers, Stijn de Laure, Policy Officer of the European Research Area Unit at the Directorate General for Research and Innovation at the European Commission. Welcome. He has a PhD in biotechnology, and he has been active in several umbrella organizations like the League of European Research University, LERU. Welcome on stage. Next speaker, Gonzalo Arévalo, General Director for Research Planning at the Spanish Ministry of Science and Innovation. He has a PhD in decision engineering and has been working on the field of research management for many years, including at the Carlos III Spanish National Health Institute. Welcome. And finally, Renaud Jolivet, Chair of Neural Engineering and Computation at Maastricht University in the Netherlands. In 2023, he received the Marie Curie Alumni Association Career Award and the André Mitsche Young Academy of Europe Prize for Science and Policy. So the stage is yours, and enjoy the conversation.
Thank you. Thank you very much. It's a pleasure to be here. It's a real pleasure to be here, and I hope everyone has enjoyed the conference yesterday. I think it was a very full and a very interesting day. The focus, as you all remember, was on science for policy, and I think we learned a lot about how science can influence policy, what are the different mechanisms, what are the opportunities, what are the different types of science for policy. We had some pitches on best practices, but now we're going to switch the focus a little bit because, of course, science for policy is important, but you need the policies for science. And that's the shift we're going to talk about right now, basically what the science, what policies are needed. So in this panel, we're going to talk about the European policy proposals aimed at researchers' careers to make them more attractive, diverse, sustainable, and obviously to achieve the European research area. So here, the idea is to obviously present the European proposals in this area, but also we'll have the case of a member state, a national context, also what type of policies are in place, and the example of a specific researcher. So today, the objectives that we want to try to achieve in this panel is to identify which policies are promoting attractive, sustainable researchers' careers. And obviously, we want a balanced circulation, we want international collaboration, we want transdisciplinary research, we want intersectoral mobility. And all this is going to contribute to the European research area, and specifically Action 4. But I won't talk about Action 4, because then we'll talk about Action 4. Another objective that we have in this session is to identify the measures needed at the different levels. Okay, so Europe, the European Commission, obviously we are trying to put in the policies that make the science possible and all the efforts that are needed to give that European added value, but also at a member state level, there's policies that are necessary to achieve this European research area and to make the research careers more attractive in the member states. And of course, there's an institutional level responsibility to also to make these policies. So we were talking about the necessary conditions, that is, the reforms that are necessary or the investments that are necessary to make these conditions possible for making research careers attractive. And finally, the role of MSCA, and that's why we're here today. We're talking about diverse careers to tackle global challenges, and obviously the program itself, the researchers themselves, all of you, and how are you going to contribute to achieving these goals. So, with no further ado, I'm going to pass the word. The speakers are going to make some opening remarks. So, Sten, would you want to go ahead and make your opening remark and tell us about EDA Action 4?
Good morning, everyone. Thank you, Cecilia. Could you run the slides, please? So, I would like to start with a small poll. Is there anyone in the audience who does not know about the European research area, the ERA? Don't be shy. Okay, very good. That's it. Most policymakers in the audience? No. Scientists? Usually don't. But what I will explain a bit is the policy that is helping to make research careers more attractive and more sustainable. The policy that we are developing at European level with member states and stakeholders. One of the policies that, or tools from this policy that you all know of is the Charter and Code. It was mentioned yesterday as well. I will explain a bit the new charter and what it will bring to scientists. How does this? Yeah. So there is good news and there are challenges. The good news is that Europe is a strong knowledge house with 2 million researchers counted by Eurostat not so long ago. 1.6% of the labor force are researchers, but there are huge disparities and variations across member states, as you can see on the slide. The number of researchers grew tremendously, and there is a high need for the highly skilled research innovation talents if we want to solve societal and economic challenges. Europe is a bit lagging behind in this growth to new strong blocks in the world. And 53% of researchers across the European Union are employed in business sector, 32% in academia. This is great, but again here there are large variations. In many member states, the business sector does not recruit researchers, or the business sector is not innovative enough. There are persistent skills mismatches and inadequate training still remaining across the EU. And, well, 80% of doctoral candidates aspire an academic career. Many postdocs aspire an academic career and are not looking what the rest of the world, the rest of the labor market has to offer. And this is an issue for Europe as well. The flow-through of talents from academia to non-academic sector, but also vice versa, is not happening so much. 30% of all researchers in Europe are mobile, defined by employed somewhere else in another country than the country of citizenship. There are at least 11 member states that suffer from brain drain. Cost of a higher outflux of talents rather than influx. And so all these challenges we are trying to solve through policy. And of course, the one instrument that is very successful in spreading this policy is MSCA. So the counteraction that the political call from the Council gave us is to install better recruitment and working conditions throughout the European research area, strengthen intersector mobility in all directions, induce reform of organizations, regions, and member states where it is needed to create a better balanced talent circulation, making careers more attractive at home for both domestic and foreign talents. A challenge that was not on the previous slide is the precariousness of research careers. Research careers are often very temporary, causing a lot of stress and mental health problems of young scientists. So this is something, together with the member states, we are trying to cope with. We want to do something about the skills mismatches as far as they are present in the various regions in Europe, and establish, update existing tools, including the Charter, for instance. So the European research area, is the idea, the concept of growing towards a single market for knowledge in Europe. It's a process as well, governed by the member states and the Commission, together with stakeholders, to get better in knowledge, talent circulation, in creating knowledge, in innovating, using the results of science. So the member states and the EU level are pursuing the so-called ERA policy agenda with 4 major priorities and 20 so-called actions. Priorities are deepening the ERA, doing more, better together. the twin transitions, we have been hearing a lot of it, green and digital transition, amplifying access to excellence where it is needed in several regions of Europe, and advancing investments and reform. So these actions got a lot of commitment from the member states, and they are pursuing it together. So action 4 is about strengthening research careers. I would also like to point you to some other actions like the reform of research assessment, improving knowledge valorization, empowering universities to develop in line with the ERA priorities, and also action 17, because this was discussed yesterday, strengthening the strategic capacity of public research organizations. Action 17 is about research management, which includes all the support measures, people that are helping the scientific enterprise, basically, which includes also ethics and support managers, data stewards, pre- and post-award officers, policy officers, and science for policy-making officers. I don't know this is a correct term, but it's also this. So we are looking at various levels. But let me focus now a bit on strengthening research careers. This action is the most committed one of all the entire policy agenda, so 26 member states committed to it and are ready to implement its tools, so which is great. What is action 4? It's promoting attractive research careers, preparing better balanced talent circulation, having international transdisciplinary and intersectional mobility. And there's a package of 4 major strands. The first one is the most important one. It's setting standards for good working conditions, better recruitment, and so on, the better careers, diverse careers. For this, the Commission, together with the Member States, developed a European framework for research careers. And annexed to this framework is the new Charter for Researchers. I will go deeper into that as well. Once we have the standards, of course, we need to make sure or support the implementation at member state level, regional level, organizational level. And for that, the Commission is developing quite some tools, which you will hear more about, and I will explain a few of them. The ERA Talent Platform is a new and extended version of Euraccess, which you may have heard of. Euraccess is we were trying to develop a one-stop shop in that sense. There will be a careers observatory launched next year, which will monitor anything related to the standards, how it is implemented. We will have research capability explain and so on. The third strand is cultural change. And this is an action that we do in synergy with action 3 of the policy agenda. This is about reform of research assessment and researcher assessment. Taking into account the impact of your science is very important, and you need to be accountable for it, but also you need to be judged on it and be awarded for the things you create, the impact you create. And finally, we are calling to join forces to the labor market actors of the research innovation labor market to create more investments. And we will pilot an action, which I can talk a bit more later if you want. An action that will help organizations in change, organizational change linked to the standards of the good working conditions and so on. So this will support, incentivize, fund organizations to make that change at organization level, targeting all scientists in such an organization. So let me now go a bit deeper in first of all, the European framework for research careers and the new charter. Apologies for the busy slide. This is a summary of a very complex document, and I'm presenting actually the proposal for a council recommendation which the Commission adopted in July, but actually I have to thank the Spanish presidency for their swift action. We will have on the 8th of December an adopted council recommendation that under the leadership of the Spanish presidency the council will conclude. It will be a bit different as this one, the same structure with some the Spanish presidency and the council made it even better than what I'm going to present. So this represents how we see the EU sees good, attractive, sustainable research careers. These are the conditions, the standards, how to make it more attractive, a research career. So it promotes the full recognition of researchers as a job. It defines research profiles, careers, steps. It defines research managers, technicians. It encompasses the open, transparent, and merit-based recruitment principles that many of you know, but that are not implemented everywhere yet. There are specific measures for early career researchers. It defines or promotes or recommends how to do intersectoral collaboration, mobility, and talent circulation in all directions. It provides career development and progression, and calls for reform at organizational level to make careers more attractive and ensure a better R&I system that can host more researchers and induce a better balanced mobility. So, annexed to this, this is probably what you're most familiar with, the Council recommendation is soft law. So it's one of the instruments at the disposal of the European Union to, well, do law. It sets standards. A recommendation is soft law, so it's voluntary, but it sets standards and it enables the European level and the member states to monitor what's going on. It will induce change, which will take time. And annexed to this soft law is the new charter, so it's part of it, of the soft law. This is different than before. The Charter and Code was a Commission recommendation which had no legal aspect at all. Now it is written in the European law as a soft law. What is new? There are adapted principles. For instance, open science was new if you compare the original Charter and Code, which was set up in 2005 already. So there are several aspects that are new or had to be adapted. There is a reduced number of principles. It's simpler. Instead of 41, we have now 20. It focuses on all sectors instead of only on the academic sector or mainly on the academic sector, improving also interoperability of careers between sectors. So there are 4 pillars. One is on ethics, integrity, gender, and open science. The second one on researcher assessment, the recruitment, career progression. Third on working conditions and practices. And the fourth one on research careers and talent development. So I trust that Marie Skłodowska-Curie actions will actually continue implementing the principles of the Charter and use this new Charter as well. Now, in my final explanation on a tool that will help you to implement these very good standards, very good working conditions, create better skills for researchers, I would like to introduce you to ResearchComp. It's a tool that is already available to organizations, to individual researchers, to policymakers. It describes 7 areas of competences and skills for researchers and 38 transferable skills. Now, why would you make use of it? As an individual researcher, it can help you define where you need still more training. As an organization, it can help you to define which type of training you still need to foresee in doctoral schools, in postdoctoral training, or targeted training events. As an employer, it can show you what kind of skills researchers have. So, of course, there are skills related to doing research, it's obvious, managing research tools, working with others, it's about teamwork, cognitive abilities, self-management, and also making an impact. And including in making an impact is also the communication to a broad public. We saw magnificent examples of young scientists today and yesterday of doing this. and also increasing impact of science and policy in society. So I encourage everyone to look into using this research comp tool and adapting your own training at an organizational level, and to individual researchers to, make use of it to improve your careers and your skills. That's it. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Sten. I know you took a lot of effort to summarize all of Action 4, which I think was important. I mean, yes, we were familiar with it, but I think it was helpful to have this insight of the different strategies, the action lines that are in place, and where it stands right now, and the results. So now, we're going to go ahead and pass on to the member state level. Gonzalo Arevalo is going to talk about the Spanish situation and how in Spain they're promoting and reinforcing the research careers. Gonzalo, the floor is yours.
Okay, thank you very much, Cecilia. It's a pleasure to share with Renaud, with Sten, and also with you, Cecilia, this roundtable, where we are trying to show how we implement the challenge of improving research careers in Spain after the amendment of the Science and Innovation Act. Let me see, it's like this, yes. Well, the main drivers came from the recovery and resilience funds, you know, the ones that we had after the COVID crisis, where at country level there were defined a number of actions implemented through the different ministries. And the component 17 is the component that refers to research and innovation initiatives. And in this component 17, we have, as in all the recovery and resilience initiatives, it is composed of a mixture of reforms and initiatives, okay? And I'm going to try to show you how, under this component, we combine the reform with the initiatives. The reform that we had, and this came from the different recommendations that we got from the European Union, but also from the OECD, was to reform the Spanish science and innovation system, and this came to the reform of the main mechanisms that we have, that it is the law or the Act for Science and Innovation. And this was done around three main pillars. On one hand, the improvement of the governance and coordination. As you may know, Spain is a country where we are a sort of federal country with competencies among the regions, also at state level, and also we are in the European Union framework. So we need to improve the governance and how we are coordinated in the implementation of the policies. On the other hand, it was clear that it was a need of achieve an attractive and stable research careers pathway. You know, it was important to, let's say, modernize the way in which we implement what it is most important when we speak about the research and innovation, that is the human capital. And the third element of this reform was to reinforce the knowledge transfer to society. So with this, we went to the existing law on science and innovation, and after an intense debate that took, I was there in September 2021, and it was approved only 1 year later, and the work was already started. So it took more than 1 year to have this reform, but finally it was approved. And it was approved with no votes against in the Parliament. I'm not going to enter into details, but it was quite interesting how these discussions enrich furthermore the amendment. Then we have the second component, or the second element within the recovery and resilience facility, that were the initiatives, where, yes, there we have, after we change the law, we have the funds in order to implement this change. And there is the initiative, there are, I think, 10 different initiatives, and the number 4 was specifically focused to the new research careers, in order to develop, attract and retain talents, in order to facilitate the access to the research career through a tenure track process, and in order to give stability and improve the working conditions since the early stage. The third element that we had was, as this was also commented yesterday in the introductory messages, it was launched an state plan to attract, retain, and retain the scientific and research and innovation talents. It was launched in June. When we go through the amendment of the law, and in particular the amendment of the law in terms of the researcher's career, it was further clarify and further details the different contractual models that we have for the researcher's career. It was established, or it was amended, well, the article number doesn't import, it's not important, but the predoctoral contract with a temporary contract up to 4+1 years, and with a labor contract that includes the end of contract payouts at the end, okay, this was not the case beforehand. The second stage contract is the one that we call access contract for researchers, that they already have their PhD, and it is up to it's between 3 to 6 years, and it has an interim evaluation that can be taken after the second year, and also it's a lower contract that includes the end of contract payouts, and also it gives access to what we call the R3 certificate that facilitates the access to the stable positions into the research and innovation system. The third element that we have amendment in the law is the distinguished research contract. That it's a contract with the duration that can be agreed with the parties, but it is addressed mainly to high-level researchers or also technicians for the direction of centers and facilities, and this gives us a sort of flexibility in order to be able to be competitive when we hire direct people that are going to be in the high management of the centers. And the last, but not the least, contract, it's what we call the open-ended contract for researchers, technologists, that it is associated to the scientific or technological lines. It's an open-ended contract where the duration of the contract is fixed by the capacity of the group, research groups, or of the centers of getting funding from outside. With this, we escaped from a model where we had a temporary contracts, okay, where the contracts were associated specifically to the projects, and we focus now on the capacity of getting funding to the research lines. And this was also a huge change. What is behind all this? There is an alignment with the European Air1, Air4 scheme. We gave more right for research since the predoctoral phase. We try to provide a more predictable and stable career. We limit the use of the temporary contracts only for the early stage and for the access stage, and we don't have temporary contracts any longer. And in addition, this was with the reform, the first 4 bullets, the second bullets, with the different initiatives that we have around the component 17 Initiative 4. We have a larger number of opportunities since 2020 in the different stages, including R3 and including a pilot action that has been recently launched in the R4. And we also include a way of rewarding also the international experience, so we can be attractive also from outside to come to Spain. With this graph, that it was also commented yesterday, we have what it is called the research career path in Spain, where we can see through the different stages, the different kind of contracts, if we are in the performing research organizations, or if we are in the universities with a different kind of contracts. So we try to better frame our models and our positions to the research careers steps. Some conclusions. Human capital is the utmost challenge for having a sustainable and competitive research and innovation system. I think it is out of doubt. It is not only a question of getting funding or temporary opportunities, but there is a need to offer and maintain an attractive framework conditions if we want to be competitive. The fact that the research and innovation systems are mainly anchored to the public bodies entails that we have limited capacities in terms of flexibility. So also there is a need of time to put in practice the adequate reforms. And I think this is all for this first part. Thank you.
Thank you, Gonzalo. Thank you, Gonzalo. I think you're right. I think it's very important, the fact that the policies, there's also need for reforms. It's not just only question of money and investments. Also, the reforms are necessary. Now, we're going to hear from Anand as a researcher, his perspective on these issues. So go ahead, you can make your presentation.
Thank you, Cecilia. How does this work? Right. So my name is Renaud Jolivet. I'm a professor of neural engineering and computation at Maastricht University. And I was asked to comment on my career trajectory in academia. And as I will describe in a second, I've developed a kind of an alternative career also in science policy, which has been an interest of mine for a number of years. And also to comment on what has worked for me. So you can see on this slide roughly the career that I had. I was born in 1978. I went to university close to where my parents live. I'm Swiss, so I went to the University of Lausanne in Switzerland. I studied physics, and then I did a PhD in neuroscience at EPFL, also in Lausanne. I had a brief career break because I had to do military service, which I did civilian service instead, but this is irrelevant. So I had about a year of a career break. And then I embarked on a postdoctoral career, which, as you can see, has been pretty long. So I spent almost a decade as a postdoc mostly on temporary contracts, initially on contracts that were renewed every 3 to 6 months, then a year at a time, and then eventually I went to the UK. I was lucky to get a Marie Skłodowska-Curie Action postdoctoral fellowship and another fellowship from the University of Zurich. And so I went to the UK with a 3-year-long perspective, which is, I think, quite unusual as a postdoc. And I think this illustrates some of the issues that we are facing or that early career researchers are facing. So this is not typical for every field, I would believe. I'm a neuroscientist. In neuroscience, for people of my generation, a decade as a postdoc, I think, is pretty typical. The reason is because if you want to do an academic career, you need to publish a high-impact paper, whatever that means, but in practice, that means a paper in a big-name journal. And in order to produce such a paper, it will require a significant amount of time and work. And you can see that I left my postdoctoral career at the end of 2015, and I'm still publishing works from my time at University College London in the UK, almost a decade later. Actually, we have a paper that's just been accepted with data that I collected in 2013 and 2014, so almost 10 years ago. There was a decent dose of procrastination in explaining why this paper is published so late. But that's the reality of biomedical research today, is that peer review can be very adversarial. If you want to publish a high-impact paper, it might take several years in the pipeline, so submitted to a number of journals coming back and forth. And also just the mere fact of having to collect the data, doing the analysis, takes extremely long. And so a high-impact paper in neuroscience today takes many people, and it easily takes a decade to be produced. And so you can see that this is in contradiction with the kind of short-term contracts that you get as a postdoc and the relatively limited time that you have as a postdoc before you are supposed to move on to a faculty job. And so I think that's something we can get back to later, but I think it calls for a revision of how we perform science and how science is organized at universities and research centers, how it's evaluated. And so I think we cannot think of these issues separately, and we need to think of them as a systemic problem in certain fields at least. Then in 2016, I was offered a weird position that was joint between the University of Geneva and CERN, which is a particle physics laboratory, even though I'm a neuroscientist. And I went there as essentially a junior faculty. I had a non-tenure track position, so I had a contract that was limited to 4 years. I was lucky to get 2 EIC Pathfinder Open grants at that time. And somehow they allowed me to bridge the gap, because when my initial contract ran out and I would have had to leave the university, I didn't have a permanent job lined up, but I could somehow repurpose these 2 EIC Pathfinder Open grants and pay my own salary from that. And so I think it also illustrates the great benefit of EU grants and funding vehicles, is that there is a lot of flexibility built in at least some of the vehicles that allow you to, bridge the gap when it is necessary. And then eventually, almost exactly 2 years ago, I started as a full professor at Maastricht University in the Netherlands. So now, I've been also very active within the Marie Curie Alumni Association, because I got this fellowship when I went to the UK. I joined the association when it was created in 2013, and I occupied a number of leadership roles within the Marie Curie Alumni Association, and I was a board member from 2018 to 2020. And my initial motivation for that was that I'm a first-generation academic. My parents didn't go to university. I think there's a lot of unwritten rules in academia, which make navigating an academic career extremely hard if you don't have any kind of a mentorship or support. Yeah. And my initial motivation for joining the organization was to set up a mentoring scheme, which I think is eventually coming to life one day. But this triggered something in me, so I think it illustrates also the benefit of the association and the MSCA postdoctoral fellowship as a sandbox for leadership. Because once I realized that I could get elected to things, I got elected, or I was brought to become a board member at the Initiative for Science in Europe, and I became more and more active in science policy. And eventually, at the beginning of last year, my colleagues asked me whether I would represent stakeholder group 4, which is individual researchers and innovators within the ERA Forum, the European Research Area Forum, which Stein presented earlier, where science policy is being discussed by the European Commission, the member states, and a number of stakeholder representatives. And so this really gives us an opportunity to bring the voice of individual researchers and early career researchers at the table where science policy is discussed for the whole of Europe. And I think it's a really great process. And I'm really grateful, actually, that the Commission and the member states decided it was a good idea to bring us to the table. But also, this led me to become more and more active in my field and take leadership roles within my field. So I was elected to the board of directors of OCNS, which is an organization that is relevant for the work that I do as an academic. I was then I occupied various leadership roles, and I still do at the Agence Nationale de la Recherche in Paris, in France. And I became elected chair of the Science and Technology Committee of eBrains, which is the large neuroscience research infrastructure that is financed by the EU. And I'm also a fellow at the Foresight Institute in the US. And so, yeah, I think, I want to repeat this, that really if you are a Marie Curie fellow and you have an opportunity to be active in the Marie Curie Alumni Association, it's a great place to learn and develop skills to become a leader, whether you want to have an academic career or any kind of other career. And there's, I think, a number of issues and ideas we will be discussing later. I will probably stop here. Thank you.
Thank you, Renaud. Thank you very much. I think that's very, very helpful to hear your insights, to hear your situation and how your career has developed, because I think that's the only way we can connect all the dots. So let's start with a little bit of discussion. I'm going to start with you, Sten. Okay, so you presented Ed Action 4 and what the Commission is doing, we're doing to promote the research careers. What role did the member states play, or the other stakeholders? How can they complement what's going on in Ed Action 4?
Well, it is a co-creation exercise in the first place, so it's not the Commission who is deciding things, it's actually the member states, the stakeholders, and the Commission together. Mm-hmm. But now we will have soon, during the Spanish presidency, the adoption of the Council recommendation, and this is the start of it, basically. The start, why we have done standards for attractive careers, more sustainable careers, better talent circulation, but of course these standards need to be implemented, and there the job of the member states will be crucial, but also of the organizations, the research organizations, both public and private sector. So first of all, implementing, the job of the member states will be to implement the standards at national level. Incentivizing organizations to use the new charter, to induce better working conditions and use better or improve transferable skills. Do reform where it is necessary, especially in areas and organizations that suffer from brain drain, which is caused by a complex interplay of factors, and often requiring such reform to make the system more attractive to, well, talents from the region, the country, but also to attract foreign talents. So there is quite some work to do, starting with the implementation of all these standards that are concluded by the Council, and you will need to stay tuned on the 8th of December to see it all. Of course, the Commission will help member states as well. So we are considering organizing a mutual learning exercise, which is under the policy support facility of Horizon Europe for member states, to help, well, exchange of practice, because many member states, like you heard the explanation of the Spanish ministry on new law that is implemented. Other initiatives are taking place in other countries, so by sharing practices and learning from each other, all member states progress. So this is one action we target the member states. We also target actions to organizations. I briefly explained the investment strand of the Action 4 package. So we will pilot next year. The call will open in April and close in September. We will target organizations. We will fund organizations to make necessary changes aligned with the Council recommendation, aligned with the new charter. So this is not funding researchers, but this is funding the organization to implement certain strategies, to better career services, change or improve doctoral schools, set up postdoc guidance, and so on. So it's a new way that we are testing how to help organizations make necessary changes. So it all starts from the bottom up. What the member states need, they can do. What the organizations' needs are, they can do. And we will offer some support instruments. And of course, the individual researchers, we offer tools like Research Comp for competences. It's very important that you check and you show your future employers, look, these are the skills, the transferable skills I have obtained. I know how to do it. So we hope that this will help.
Great. That's very good. That's
everyone.
very good. I definitely think that the initiative of having the Recovery and Resilience Facility to match reforms and investments was very positive, and we see Spain has done an excellent job in implementing that, and the fact that it has a whole component dedicated to research and innovation, it's really important. So Gonzalo, I'll pass on to you. What is Spain doing? Tell us a little bit about the Council conclusions and what the challenges are for the researchers in Spain in general.
Yes, well, the first challenge is to implement this reform. This is clear, because one thing is to write the law, and the other thing is to implement it.
Right.
Okay, and this also, as I tried to give in my final message, then the implementation takes time, in order to change all the field play in which we are. The challenges that I see for Spain, when we speak about the researchers' careers, is on one hand is the aging of the population and the aging of the researchers, because we have this in Spain after the 28 crisis. There was a slowdown process in the access to the research careers for 10 years, and this made that there is an important gap on the staff and on knowledge to be covered. No, so to this end, it's also very important to work on, apart on the reform, but also to work on developing vocations since a very early stage maybe in the secondary education or whatever. This is one of the challenges that we have. The other challenge, and this was also pointed out in the STEM presentation, is to be competitive. And to be competitive is not only to have a good framework, but to have also a good specific conditions. Also, as I refer, when we work in the public environment, the flexibility is not certainly our main asset. Okay, we have strict rules, and we have to see how we can overcome these, let's say these barriers in order to try to be competitive. Because it's as I refer, talent and knowledge is the base for everything. If we don't have this, we can have the better facilities, the better research infrastructures, but we cannot progress. A third element, and that it is also a challenge, and I see also here representatives from the Spanish State Research Agency, is to do the transition to the new means of evaluation, okay? More focus on their per se research activity and less based in bibliometric. And to this end, it's important that it is very well designed, this transition, to ensure coherence, continuity, but also to ensure that we are able to change. And I think that's it for challenges. So we have worked for many years.
But
today,
a start is there. I mean,
yes.
And I think the important thing is starting to recognize what conditions are needed, putting the measures that are needed for these conditions, and then obviously the implementation. Renaud, okay, we heard all these policies and the European level and at the state, at the national level, but what is needed really to make the careers more attractive, especially for the young researchers? And as MSCA alumni, what do you think? What would be your wish list, or what would you think would be needed?
I think there are a few things. I think there's a lot of good things in the area action for. I think everything that can facilitate mobility and administrative procedures is really necessary, because in practice, when you move to a different university or a different country, most universities don't offer any help with paperwork. You need to handle pension, health insurance, housing on your own. And if you get there with a fellowship of 12 months and you need to find the next funding after 12 months, and on top of that, you need to handle a family and your pension and whatnot. I mean, this becomes additional stress factors. And so I think everything that can be made to facilitate mobility and uniformity within the ERA landscape is really good. And I think it makes Europe less competitive if you compare the American job market or the Chinese job market. You have essentially a single country with a single system with a very large number of opportunities and positions for researchers, right? You can move all across the US. And you will not be, fumbled by the administrative procedures. Yeah. And so I think everything that goes towards uniformizing or making Europe more uniform in that regard is really good. But I think there also needs to be a reckoning with one of the main issues. I think one of the issues is the fact that, and it's cultural, I think that in certain fields, in biomedical research, that is definitely the case. There is very much a mentality of up or out, right? So your career is either you progress in your career or you have to leave and be a failed academic outside of academia. And I think there is academics need to rethink this view and allow for people to have non-traditional academic trajectories where you can be mobile in and out of academia, leave to industry, come back, or leave to government or NGOs and come back. And I think there's a lot of work to be done there. And it's really, I think the main limitation is how academics think of what an academic is, right? And there's a lack of diversity in that regard. That can be sometimes pretty shocking, I find. And then the third point I think that is really important is something I was trying to allude to, is that in certain fields, the complexity of the issues that we are facing mean that work doesn't happen at a 1 or 2 year time scale. You don't make any significant progress anymore at that kind of time scale, because what could be done in that way, has been done in the 70s, in the 80s, right? The simple questions have been answered, and now we are left with the complex questions. And as a neuroscientist, I feel neuroscience is a perfect example of that, where we need to move now to large-scale research, in my opinion, in neuroscience to really tackle the complexity of the brain. And unlike in particle physics, for instance, we lack the structures in academia and in research centers to really address this in a structured way. We don't have the kind of research centers and funding vehicles and career tracks that would enable this transformation. And I'm worried that Europe is lagging behind in that regard because it's definitely happening in the US now. So there are some initiatives in the US that I think are very successful. And we don't have these kind of research centers for neuroscience in Europe. And so there needs to be also a reckoning of that. And I think policymakers need to think in a more granular way that for certain fields, there needs to be really systemic changes in how the whole research is being funded and organized.
That's great. That's very interesting, the point that you made. I think very, very relevant. I think we have to change the way science is done, or the science career is done, and I think that is a way to make it more attractive. We have to break the silos, like you said, and be able to move from one type of institution to another. A little bit yesterday was in the workshop discussing how people move into a different sector and then coming back to research for that to be acceptable. So I think that's very important, and that brings us a little bit to what the conference is about diverse careers for the global challenges and science for policy. Sten, what do you think? How do you think Action 4 is contributing to this?
Well, there is an article or a chapter in the Council recommendation on skills, intersectoral, interdisciplinary innovation skills. If I recall well, it's Article 18, 17 or 18, one of the recommendations basically, and this includes skills for science for policy making. So implementing, therefore it becomes a standard. We hope it will become a standard. So introducing it in upskilling activities, in training activities for early career researchers throughout the era. Secondly, I explained the research comp tool, which I invite again scientists as well as organizations to use when you're developing your career track or your doctoral and postdoctoral training mechanisms or systems to include these transversal skills. And also here, the science for policy making will hugely help well, creating more impact. Thirdly, I would like to say, to refer again to not only Action 4, but also Action 17.
Research,
so strengthening the strategic capacity of research organizations, public research organizations, is a very important objective. Many of the actions under the era are actually implemented by research managers, including this science for policy making. So supporting scientists with very state-of-the-art tools, techniques, methods will be hugely important. The science enterprise, if I may say, and innovation enterprise is getting more and more complex, and more of this kind of research management support will be needed in the future. So I think there are many aspects that
contribute to
where
this.
the tools from the entire era policy agenda will help in creating more impact on policy making as well as on societal challenges.
And maybe fomenting this new profile, like they were talking about yesterday, that the fact that maybe we need different type of people to work as this interface. In Spain, what are you doing to help support this science for policy?
Yes, well, certainly, as commented during the opening statement, in the reform that we conduct on the Spanish Science and Innovation Act, there was one pillar focused on knowledge transfer. And a part of going beyond and try to boost the knowledge transfer, so the knowledge that it is generated at the research organizations and that the universities can better reach the market and the society, we also want to have a broader understanding on what we consider knowledge transfer. So other means, as it is the case of the science for policy, can be considered under this understanding, among others. This means that it is not only to have specific actions, but again, we need also to change the settings and adapt the settings on how we evaluate the research careers. So we can also consider the Science for Policy as one of the means in order to develop the research careers. This is, it was also referred yesterday in the opening, when we launched in December last year the specific national plan for knowledge transfer and collaboration. There are 15 key measures, and one of these measures is specifically addressed to this, to the Science for Policy, to the public sector.
Okay, thank you. Renaud, I know you already alluded to that a little bit about what we need for the researchers' careers, but what do you, in specific in the topic in Science for Policy through Marie Curie, how do you think that, what initiatives should be done, or what recommendations would you say are needed?
So I think in the context of the ERA Action Force specifically, there is a possible, I would think, a need to, and I think the Observatory for Research Career is a great initiative. I think in practice it will be pretty hard to conclude things from the data because of the diversity of the careers across Europe, but hopefully this will progressively resolve as you know, careers become maybe more comparable or more uniform. And I think the adoption of this R1 to R4 framework was a pretty good idea, because it will force institutions and member states to use that to think through that lens and through that framework. And I think, for instance, the Marie Curie Alumni Association, I'm a mere member, so I don't want to speak for the board, but we have more than 20,000 registered members, I believe. And so it's also a great opportunity to collect data on research trajectories. And I think unless we understand, you know, the practicalities of doing research today, it will be very hard to craft policies that work and that really enable the full potential of Europe. And so I think it's very important to be able to have a concrete data-driven view of what research careers are. And one thing that I'm worried is that a lot of people in leadership position in academia are of a certain generation, let's say, and their experience of their research career is very, very different to what happened to me. And probably my view is already pretty different to what happens to younger people. And so I think research careers are evolving very quickly, and the research landscape is evolving very quickly. And so we need to be able to collect data almost on the fly, I would think, and not necessarily retrospectively from 20 years ago, because this is not going to be, you know, very informative to the policy-making process.
Yes, I think that you make a very, we're going to start taking questions from the audience, but I think you make a very good point with the research observatory that's going to be launched. I know the Commission is working closely with the OECD and specifically with the NESTI group, the National Experts in Science and Technology Indicators, because I think, I mean, you need the data, and we need now with this the policies to be able to collect the data. And so I think it's very important, because you're right, the data itself is not going to say much, but we have to be able to interpret it. But the first step is getting the information. So I'm going to open the floor for any questions. I see one right here.
Hi, thank you. Marta Agostinho, EU Life, Alliance of Independent Research Institutes in the Life Sciences across Europe. Thanks a lot for the really inspiring panel. I'm in many meetings, and I'm still super interested today on what you are saying. Really, thanks a lot for this discussion. I have two comments that maybe you could comment back. One is about really, I think Renaud also touched upon that. The key word here is really diversity, right? Diversity of research careers. And this diversity has several levels. And in terms of the types of careers, the intersectoral that everybody knows about. But what you touched upon, and it's not spoken enough, is about the interinstitutional diversity, because the research ecosystem is complex and rich. And sometimes we kind of confuse academic with only university, or is it academic, the whole research ecosystem? Are we talking about research careers? Are we talking only about research careers within universities? And we have a huge opportunity to make a difference in Europe now if we capacitate the whole research ecosystem. And sometimes in the ERA actions, we tend to simplify and to focus on only one type of institution, and the capacity building should come for everybody, because me as a researcher, it doesn't matter. What it matters is that I have a career and I can move from university to a research institute to a big infrastructure, whatever. Second comment, again, I think Renaud mentioned it a little bit. Sorry. I kind of forgot it. So
That's okay, Marta.
I come back.
Okay, thank you. Renaud, I think do you want to answer or do you want to comment on her comment?
Yeah, I can. So I'm an academic through and through. So I can. My view is very much the view of an academic, right? So I can only comment on that because my experience is at universities and research infrastructures, and I don't know what happens in industry or in government really. But the point I was making is that, yeah, so I agree with you about the diversity. I think diversity has many dimensions. But one I think that is rarely considered is the diversity of trajectories and careers, right? And within universities, at least, and I think within research infrastructures probably as well, the academic view is that there's only one type of trajectory that is acceptable, and the moment you deviate from that trajectory, you are contaminated and cannot be let in the door anymore. And it's really unfortunate because I think it adds to the pressure that you think, well, if my contract lapses on I have to be unemployed for a few months, what are my peers going to think? and so it puts this additional pressure to consider only the academic trajectory, and that has to be only of one type. And I think unfortunately, I think there's really academics have to look in the mirror and reflect on the kind of culture they are promoting within their institutions. Because I don't think there are any institutional or structural barriers to hire people who have a more diverse trajectory. It's just purely in the heads of professors. And that needs to change, I think.
Thank you. Sten, you wanted to say something?
Yes, thank you very much, Marta. You're, of course, very right. When I was talking, I spoke about academic and non-academic careers, and in fact, I used the MSCA definition on that. Academic careers or academic organizations includes research and technology organizations. But it's not about the dichotomy at all. With the Council recommendation, the European Framework for Research Careers, we're trying to support diversity, more diverse career paths. It doesn't matter where you are, shouldn't matter. It's about more interoperability between organizations, be it from business, government, public administration, universities, research institutes, it doesn't matter. So we would like to also about what Renaud said about we need a big effort, big centers, interdisciplinary, institutional. And we would like to talk more about talent ecosystems rather than about organizations. It is about collective effort. And the pilot I was talking about is actually targeting exactly that. So different types of actors in the R&I labor market joining forces to create such a talent ecosystem, being supported to make some change. So, yeah, also here, stay tuned, please. And if this pilot becomes success, we need to upscale it, of course. So I'm totally with you on that terminology.
Yes, did you
yes,
want
no,
to
very short. And regarding this intersectorial challenge, it is certainly a challenge. I think that, again, the way in we assess the research can give us the driver in order to change and to adapt to this continuously changing environment that we have. Just this short.
Yeah, we have to adapt. Any?
I remember the second question.
Very
quick. This is about science policy. You asked what can we do about science policy, and I think in science policy, we don't have to invent the wheel all the time. There is a huge game changer that the European Commission developed so well, but unfortunately, it's not implemented enough at the member states level. And this is not a criticism to Spain, because Spain is in the panel, but I want to make a plea to all the member states, and please have your comment and correct me if I'm wrong. I'm talking about Resaver. How can we retain and attract talent if we cannot tell a promising researcher that he or she can collect pension across different member states? And this does not happen, correct me if I'm wrong, because of national legislation and because member states do not do enough efforts to make Resaver happen. So do you have any comments about that?
Thank you, Marta. We have another question over there. Does it? We'll take note of it. There's a question over here, I think.
Hi, Alexandra Dubini, Vice Chair of the Marie Curie Association and Professor at the University of Cordoba. I have one comment and a question at the same time. I'm glad to hear about the action for and the diversity and also retaining talent. But I almost feel that we are too late, because we are entering now a new era, actually, where we are missing PhD students. We are looking for postdocs. And when I talk to my colleagues, we are in this no man's land where actually the PhD students are dropping down. So then that leads to no postdocs. And so I'm wondering if you are actually taking into account that, because before we were losing the brains, right? Everyone was going somewhere else, doing its training, and we wanted to retain that. But now we're actually missing that. We are entering this new phase, and I think it's very important to take into account that, because it's going to impact the future.
Thank you.
And so, yeah, so
Okay.
what is...
Yeah. I mean, I think Gonzalo talked about it as a challenge, the aging population and the fact that there's got to be vocations.
It's not about aging population.
It's the vocations so that the students become, I don't know, Gonzalo, do you want to add on that?
Yes, well, I can comment. Certainly, it's, I think that we have a general phenomenon in Europe that it is the elderly population, and this is certainly affects all the fields and affects the research and innovation fields. But also there is a lack of, or there is less interest in the young students for science and for developing research careers. And that's why I refer as a challenge to the need of work more and more in the early studies at the schools and at the secondary education, in order to try to show the attractiveness of the research and innovation careers. And if I am right, it was at CERN in October this year when the Gateway Science Space was inaugurated. There was a discussion on this among the high-level politicians from the different member states, and how the large research infrastructures can play certainly a role in order to show the attractiveness of the research careers. Thank you.
Thank you. Does anybody else want to comment?
Yeah, I can just comment on that. I mean, one thing is that my feeling is that there's probably long-term structural reasons why we got there, but the effect is only visible really post-pandemic, very recently, right? So I think it will take time to adapt. And I think it's just a reflection of the fact that research careers are unattractive because of a number of problems we've highlighted. But I see that as an opportunity to change the system for the better, because as long as we could feed meat into the system, so to speak, there was no incentive for universities and institutions to really reflect on how they are organized. And so I think the fact that we are missing young researchers now will force these questions to be resolved. And I'm not sure there would have been that kind of pressure and incentives before. So, there's a silver lining to that situation, I think, that now we really have to do something about it, because it's probably, as you said, already too late, or partially too late. But you can see how academia is, in a way, extremely conservative, and it's hard to change things because people just are not super keen on changing any aspect of it. And so something relatively dramatic needs to happen in order to force institutions and professors to think differently. So I think we have to see that as an opportunity, really, in my opinion.
Yeah, definitely. I think we have a question online.
In fact, we have had a lot of contribution. So we have had a lot of contribution through the Mentimeter. So I will try to I'm ranking them according to the votes of the people, and maybe we will not have time to address all of them, but let's see what we can do in the remaining time. So it's a question for Stein. Kindly elaborate in how far research comp goes beyond what, for example, the Vitae Research Development Framework offers. Okay? How far the research comp goes beyond what, for example, the Vitae Research Development Framework offers.
The Vitae framework they did in the UK. Go ahead.
Well, with the research comp, it's a European framework of competences. Vitae is a private organization. Of course, the inspiration we get from organizations like Vitae led to research comp. There are organizations throughout the European Union that have similar competence frameworks. Not only Vitae, also individual institutions, universities have it. But nothing existed so far at the European level. So I think that's the difference. We now have a tool that individual researchers, organizations can refer to at a European level. And we hope that will make a difference in upskilling, in interoperability of careers between organizations, institutions, companies. So that I would see as a difference.
Thank you.
Okay.
Any other question?
Yeah.
From the audience?
Yeah.
Okay, we'll get to 1 second. We'll get one more here, and then we'll take you.
Perfect. So I go on?
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay. So a question for Gonzalo. So impressive changes have been made in the Spanish research and development system. Can you already observe effects of these changes, and if yes, which ones? Thank you.
Well, it's a good question, because one of the challenges I refer is precisely the implementation of the reform. But yes, I think that we can see in some or in many research organizations how, for instance, the reform of the law in terms of having this open-ended contract has served in order to not only have more research staff working, but also not losing this research staff, because in the former framework that we have, once the project was over, the people has to be fired, and then sometimes they come back or they go to another organization. So we were able to retain talent, and we have figures in some centers, as it is the case of the Barcelona Supercomputing Center, that it's a center coded by the state and the regional government, where the figures are really impressive, and this is because the capacity is very linked to the capacity they have to get funding from outside. Yes, thank you.
Okay.
Thank you. We're going to take another question from the audience over there. Can someone give him a mic? Raise your hand again so they can see you.
Thank you for the interesting discussion and different perspective. Donata Iandolo, I am a board member of the MSCA, and I'm also a researcher at INSERM in France. And here I'm speaking as a researcher, with a very scared researcher opening her lab and not having PhD students, or very hard to find postdocs. With salaries in France, that are really ridiculous if I have to compare them to other countries in Europe and to the US. So maybe I mentioned the elephant in the room. We are not really talking about salaries. And I think as a young people coming to academia, they, or not coming to academia, they also take this into account. And so I was wondering, you know, like MSCA programs have very good salary conditions and like general condition. Let's say if we compare it to the general salary in Italy or in France, but or in Spain, yeah. But you know which measures you can think to support states, the single states, of course, to improve this, and or the single institutions, because I think this is key as well. And sorry for the long question.
Okay, thank you. Who wants to address that? I mean, it's.
But if I can, well, I think that you are very right on this issue, and it is behind or this is a big challenge that we have in general. As I said, at least in my country, in Spain, the research are based at public bodies, and this means that we have, let's say, a number of barriers, and one of the barriers is to be really competitive. Solutions is to develop flexible figures in order to have them, in order to run the management of the research centers. But I think that always we have to keep our foot on the earth, okay, and consider that we won't be able ever to be at the same level of flexibility that you can have in the private sector and not in the research and innovation sector. But on the other hand, we have other means to be attractive, as you can show and offer opportunities to be in the center where the developments are done. So I think that it is a combination of, yes, we have to certainly, and in the case of Spain, this is clear, we have to improve even more the conditions, and in particular the economic conditions on how we pay the researchers' career. But on the other hand, we have to also show the other benefits that are behind working in this field. Thank you.
Thank you. You wanted to say something, Sten? Yeah.
Yes. So please thank you for the elephant in the room. The European Framework for Research Careers is trying to make the working conditions better, more attractive. Working conditions includes remuneration packages, which includes salaries, but also social security rights, the entire package of remuneration. This is a national competences, and the European level can help here by comparing, of course, linked to the local situations. But this is a national competence. So this is something that the national governments can improve if they wish. The European level, I think, well, the MSCA indeed is setting again a very great example in attractive salaries in that sense. So, but that's for a European fellowship. In that sense, we can try to see, for instance, in this mutual learning exercise between member states, how things are done in this country and that country, and try to get to an approach that is suitable for all countries. Not one uniform, because that's utopia at all. So, but slowly there is progress, and again, the MSCA example is great in that sense.
Okay, thank you. Okay, we're running out of time. We can't take any more questions, but I'm going to ask our speakers if they can give a closing statement if they want to, and any points that you want to emphasize or to say to the audience. I thank you all for very, very interesting debate and good presentations and a very good discussion. So I'll start with you, Renaud.
Yeah, I think we heard before from one of the pitch presentations the necessity for policymakers to be more innovative. And so I would like to see more innovation from policymakers. And, you know, try, as I said, I think we need to rethink how science is being performed, at least in certain disciplines. And so maybe this is an opportunity to try things. And if they don't work, they don't work. But to at least try to be more innovative in how we organize research. Because I think we are in a competition with other great science powers. And they are not sleeping, and we are slowly being left behind. And so if we don't move ahead, we will be really left behind by China and the United States, to be concrete. So
Thank you.
know,
Gonzalo.
the ball is in your camp now.
Gonzalo.
Yes, well, the problem is that we cannot test with the whole system, no?
Yeah.
Because we may have several risks. No, I think that, and I am for innovation in the public policies, okay? So not because only I work for the Ministry of Science and Innovation, but because I also think that there is a need also of continuous adaptation, okay, to the framework in order to become competitive, but we have not to lose the good conditions and the different conditions that we have in Europe. That is also makes the difference from not only from China, certainly, but from other third countries where we have some kind of benefits that we give per se, but they are not so visible in other.
Yes,
in
can't take this for granted. Very right.
Thank you.
Sten, any final comments or
Yes,
remarks?
well, stay tuned, first of all, and then implement the European framework for research careers. Help us implement it at national level, at organizational level, because in the end we are doing this to make better, more sustainable, more interoperable research careers. We are doing this for the researchers. And in the end, for the researchers to do better science, to create more impact for solving societal challenges. So help us implement it.
Okay. Why don't you join me thanking our panel for great work. Yep.
Okay, thanks a lot to the panel. Very interesting discussion, really food for thought. And now it's time for a coffee break, okay? So there is a half an hour break, but don't go, wait, just a second. Couple of practical things. We invite you to be back here on spot at 11:30 because we will do a group picture. So you only need to sit back at your chairs and there will be a group picture from here, okay? And I think that's it. Don't miss the award ceremony after the coffee break because it will be fun, okay? Bye-bye.